Welcome to the stream, everybody. Welcome. Whether you are watching live with us or you're watching the video later on, I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you for your comments, your likes, your subscriptions. I really appreciate it. My name is Maxwell Miller. I'm a fine artist, a contemporary realist painter, and that's exactly what we're doing today, is some contemporary realism painting. I'm also the Dean of the ÀNI Art Academies Dominicana. Now, we are streaming. This is the first time we are streaming. This is the first live stream we've done of my work. And being in the Dominican Republic, that means we may have a little bit of lag on our internet, just every now and then. We'll fix it if a problem happens. The power shuts off every now and then. We have generators, don't worry about it. But if that happens, you're going to see the break screen going on break screen. Don't worry about it. We're coming back. Don't abandon me. I'll be back. If you have any questions, anything like that, feel free to put them in the chat. We've got producer Rachel is in the chat. She'll let me know. Oh, there she is. She'll let me know if there's any questions for me. I'd love to talk to all of you about painting, about some of the things that I'm doing, some of the tools that I'm using. Whether it's art related or otherwise, put your questions in the chat. I'd love to talk to you. So with that, I want to tell you a little bit. Let's see, I'm going to take this down. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the painting that I have going on today. So here's what it looks like. We have, oh, one second. There we go. So our painting today, we've got King Midas I'm working on. I just got started on it. I think this is day 4. So I've been painting for a short while now. Here, I'll move my palette out of the way so you guys can see a little bit better. So that's what we've got so far. Just a few days in. I'm working pretty quick, but a little bit sloppy, a little bit messy, if I'm honest. The first layer always is. Nothing you can do about that. So, well, I see Edgar in the chat. Hello, Edgar. Good to see you from Colombia. Pamela Miller, good to see you. Thanks for chatting with us. So today we're going to continue with King Midas here, and we're going to do a little bit of his robe, a little bit of the red, a little bit of the blue. Again, we're going to go pretty quick, but it's okay if it's a little bit messy, a little bit, you can see if I put my reference back behind it, it's a bit dull, the contrast is a little low, saturation's a little low. That's the first layer. That's nothing you can do about that. So don't judge me too harshly for my painting here. These boards, by the way, this is a, oh, you can't quite see it there. That is an ampersand gesso board. It's pretty slippery, pretty non-absorbent. So the paint wants to move on the board. And but it's got a little bit of texture, so it kind of holds the paint in that way. Normally, the boards that I would use are very, very slick in terms of texture, but very absorbent, so they hold the paint by absorbing it, and it doesn't really want to move once that happens, but there's just practically no texture at all. So a little bit of a difference, and in those, you can certainly get a much cleaner, finer, more refined first layer. I personally, I don't know, I think I might prefer these ones, but I go back and forth, so not sure. By the way, those other panels, those are MDF panels that have been prepared with just layers and layers and layers of gesso, usually about 10 layers, it's quite a lot. That way you can sand it down too. You can use some of the sharper tools, like these little guys, these little needle points here. Use some of those sharper tools and sort of dig into those gesso layers, and yeah, a little bit easier to create finer detail with those, but I don't know, I think I might just like this better, a little bit quicker. So let's talk today about, let's see, first thing, I'm going to show you my palette here. On the palette today, I've got my normal palette, my normal color palette, which is a dual primaries palette. So we've got a black and white. We also have 2 yellows, 2 reds, 2 blues, and then we have some secondaries, purple and green, and just some convenience colors for me. These are 2 browns over here. The green really, the purple a little bit are also convenience colors. The green definitely is. But yeah, this is just pretty basic palette. And then you can see I also, and grab one of my brushes, I also have just some pre-mixes. Some of these are old, some of them are still wet. I know it's really pretty difficult to see everything on my palette, given how much dried paint is on here. This is years and years of paint on this palette. I do have another palette that's quite a bit larger that I do like to work with, but for such a small painting, something so big, it's inconvenient. So, and I may have to figure out a different solution for my palette. I'm having some problems with my thumb here. I think in no small part because of the weight of the palette and pushing on it, and yeah, I don't know. So we may have to figure out something else. But for today, that's what we're going to use. I'm happy with it. I love this palette too. It's very romantic, you know? It's very artsy. And I mean, hey, look at me. I'm all about the artsiness, the romanticism. That's where the beret comes in, right? All right, we've got a question in the chat. Producer Rachel, what do we got?
This is a question from
Edgar, yeah.
About the size of the canvas. I used to think that it was important to paint huge things, but I've seen a lot of paintings in small formats that are incredible.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, Edgar's asking about the size of the work. So here, let's switch back to our painting here. So the size of this one, I don't know if I can even tell you offhand. It's pretty small. I know it's 10 wide, and I think it's 7 tall is the overall size here. And I go back and forth, honestly. I paint both. Rachel, can you do my face cam here for a second? You can see in the background here, just of the face cam. Yeah, there you go. You can see in the background there's quite a large painting behind me. This is all the way in the back of my office here. That painting is over 5 feet tall. When framed, because I built a frame for it as well, it's about 7.5, something like that. It's quite large. Go back to my canvas there. So I do both. I do some very large paintings. I do some pretty small paintings, and it just depends on what you're looking for in that instance. For instance, this one, I'm looking to do something really tight, really impressive, really, pretty detailed, and the very large painting behind me is a little bit less detailed, a little bit looser. So I'm accomplishing different things with them, and I wouldn't say that one is dramatically better than another. I would say that they give off very different types of communication, and that's really what painting comes down to. That's really what it's all about. So if you are trying to communicate these big, sweeping ideas and these crazy compositions and things like I was, sort of attempting with this larger painting back here, very historical, in concept and in composition, that sort of needs a larger work, I feel. If you look at Solomon J. Solomon's, what is that? What is that painting? Solomon J. Solomon has done a couple paintings that are these really beautiful, like swirling compositions, and they're enormous paintings. And I definitely feel that really beautiful, enormous, sweeping compositions like that, when done small, wouldn't have the same impact. So I think it's just more about what you're trying to communicate with your artwork. And for me, another big, part of this is that this is a very small painting here, but it's also a very small subject. This is a tiny little king from a king cake. So I don't know, a half an inch tall. He's very, very small. And so something like this, very large, also wouldn't quite work. Alternatively, the large painting behind me, those figures, they're full figures, and they're around the size that they should be if you were to view them from about 10 feet away, which is, or 5-10 feet away, which is around the viewing distance of that painting. So trying to emulate a proper scale to your work is also important. So, any other questions in chat yet? Okay, yeah, if you guys have any other questions, please let me know. Love to talk about it. I have my little fish cup here. I don't know if you can... Oh, there he is. I'm drinking from the fishes. My best mobster voice. Not good. So, we're doing some painting here. I've already started a little bit today, just on some of the blue around here. I like to get a good kind of border of everything. You can see I've done that up here very well. Really trying to emulate this kind of blue background border here. And that's because if you just stop on a hard edge, you're creating that hard edge. That hard edge is going to stay there, and then your subsequent layers, you have to struggle against that edge if it's not supposed to be so hard. Or you may get kind of a ridge in your painting later on. I really don't like that. I really don't like communicating, at least with this, level of kind of tight painting. I don't like communicating the different forms with paint texture. I like communicating that with the actual luminance properties of the paint itself. So the color, the value, everything that you're seeing with the paint instead of with the texture of the paint. So that's why you can see some of these odd edges here. So we just got started. I'm gonna keep going down with this blue here. I've pretty well surrounded this little part, this red of his robe. So I'm going to continue on with the red of the robe there. And I just want to mention to you before I get started, and there's a lot of prerequisites to starting this one, but something that I want to mention here, and then I'm going to get to your questions. I see a question in the chat, but something that I want to mention here is this is my reference. This reference is laminated. And the reason that I've done that, I'm trying this out, you're gonna see me do it throughout my painting here, is if I am curious about the exact blue that I have here, I'm gonna take the blue from my palette, there you go. I'm gonna take the blue from my palette and I'm going to apply it. Let's say I think incorrectly that this blue goes way up here in the robe, and you can see, ooh, that is incorrect. And so I can then test out my colors very accurately, and I should be able to wipe it off very easily. Try again. You're gonna see me do this a couple times. There you go. Yeah, so that's it, totally gone. By laminating your work, you can use it as a color checker, your reference rather, you can use it as a color checker. And I've not really done this before, and that idea came from Mark Carter, portrait artist, excellent artist, and YouTuber also. Mark Carter. So yeah, he turned me on to that idea, and I haven't used it before, but I'm going to try it today and see how it goes. I figured it would be good if you're the type of artist who struggles a little bit with your paint mixing, struggling to get just exactly the right value, the right color. That should make it a little bit easier for you. So I'm also going to try it today, see how it goes. Then maybe I can suggest it or not. So we've got a question in the chat. Let's see, what do we got?
Edgar has one more question.
Edgar with another question. What you got?
Has changed your painting conceptually speaking?
It's a good question, Edgar. I've never thought about it. Has my painting changed conceptually since being in the Dominican Republic? I don't know. I think, honestly, I think my painting has changed, but it's based off of a practicality standpoint. It is sometimes impractical to do the type of work that I would like to be doing while in the Dominican Republic, and it's disappointing, and maybe that's a disappointing answer. But for example, I don't have quite the same access to models that I would be looking for, or still life objects maybe that I'd be looking for. Sure, you can order things on Amazon, but if you work the way that I do, create the composition, do reasonably one variation of your reference, hate it inevitably, and then move on, try to do more and more and more of those iterations. It's difficult to make changes quickly while you're still in it, while you're still being creative about it. And taking advantage of that creative energy by say, oh, I really need this one thing, and it would look so perfect. And I have done this before. I'd be, oh, this would look wonderful in this painting. And so I'll get it. And when I'm here, it'll take, a couple weeks to get it from Amazon. And then I'll put it in the painting and I'll step back and I'll think, that looks terrible. And now I have to go and do it all over again and wait several weeks. So conceptually, I don't know. I don't know about that. Obviously, you know, when you are a working artist and you're working consistently, your work does just change, conceptually and otherwise, just with your progress as an artist or as a creative in general. Your work changes. So I don't know that change is as a result of where I am any more than it's just as a result of I'm progressing as an artist. So yeah, hope that answers your question. Have any more in the chat before I get going here? No? All right. Well, yeah, let me know. Oh, I got a little tiny spider on my easel here. Gotta get rid of him. Okay. Don't want him ending up in my paint. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna keep going with this little painting here, and we're just sort of scrubbing things in. I'm not being overly specific. You will notice actually that there's some dulling going on. Everything's pretty low contrast. It's what's called sinking in. So my work is drying effectively. It's really just the oil that's polymerizing. It's all kind of starting to sink in, and it makes everything look super dull. Like you can see this corner up here. That is black. That is black. That is as dark as I can get it. And yet, man, that looks pretty gray. Maybe part of that is the lights here. I don't think so. I think it's mostly just that sinking in. So that's, if you've ever watched someone varnish paintings, maybe a conservator or another artist online, if you've ever varnished paintings yourself, you will know that you hit a dark spot with varnish and man, it just comes to life. Just beautiful. So that's exactly what's going to happen on this painting with all these dark sections. We got another question in the chat. Funnyman KT92. Okay.
They would like to know what's your favorite color?
You know, Funnyman, I'm not sure if I have an answer to that. I don't know. I've been asked something similar with like, you know, favorite things to paint, that sort of thing. And, oh man, if I'm honest, I really treat it all as just sort of the same thing. They're tools in a toolbox. It's like asking a construction worker which tool he likes best. I don't know, maybe you'd have an answer, but you know, if you're trying to hammer in a nail and your favorite tool is a jackhammer, that's probably not the right tool. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I necessarily have a favorite color. I can tell you I have favorite paints to work with, favorite colors of paint, mostly because of consistency issues. For example, alizarin crimson, terrible consistency, awful to paint with. You will see I don't really use too much of it in my first layer here because it's so thin, it's difficult to paint with. But I do have ones that I don't like very much, but I'm not sure if I have a favorite. I'm looking at them. If I had to pick, honestly, I really like that alizarin crimson. Like just as a color, it's very pretty. Yeah. I'm afraid I don't have a better answer than that. I don't really put much emotional stock into the colors themselves. So yeah. Another question?
Yes. Well, Funnyman revealed their identity. It is Vince
Mataya. Vince Mataya. Funnyman Vince Mataya. An apt name. You are a funny man, Vince Mataya.
You also have a question from Delicious Egg, who I believe is Kelsey.
Yeah, Delicious Egg is, yeah, that sounds like Kelsey.
What is your favorite kind of detail work to paint? Texture, blending, hair, etc.
Yeah, you know, I'm afraid a similar answer. It's a little bit different. So when it comes to painting individual objects, that is exactly the same. You absolutely have to treat everything the same. And I do my very best when I'm composing, when I'm making an image, references, or just, you know, conceptualizing images, anything like that. I really do my best not to pick something because it will be easier or more difficult. I really try not to. Of course, something slips through every now and then where I'm like, oh man, this is gonna suck to paint, so I don't want to do it. But typically, it's more about the end result. It's more about the finished artwork. And if one thing versus another communicates the thing that I'm looking to communicate, that's what's going to go into the painting. And I can't have any other thought about it. There are a couple of things that I've done my best to have enough knowledge and research about an individual object to know that there's a connotation other than what I'm trying to give it, and maybe someone will therefore misread my painting. So in those instances, maybe I won't use something because of that. But my favorite thing to paint, listen, painting metal like chrome things is always really, really fun because it's not difficult to paint and it looks very cool at the end of it. It looks very impressive. But that's more the magic trick of painting. And somebody like Anthony Waichulis, who I learned from, he's my mentor and an incredible artist. And when I say my first layer, first layers never quite look good. That's true if you're human, but Anthony Waichulis is not. So his first layers look flawless. They look impeccable. He's an incredible artist. But something that he has related to me, and something that I have felt sometimes, is that when you really understand a painting, and you can look at somebody else's work, and it's difficult sometimes to be as impressed as maybe you once were, because you know how it's done. The magic trick is ruined for you. You know how the magic trick is done. And so it's difficult to look at it and say, wow, that looks exactly like a photo or the object itself, because you know better. You know how to do that. So the magic's gone. So when you're painting something like chrome, that's not for other artists, because other artists look at that and they're like, it's pretty easy though. So the magic isn't there for them, where there are some things, lace textures, sometimes hair, but there's some things like that it's really impressive, even if you know how it was done, even sometimes maybe more because you know how it's done. Just because you know how much work went into it. Oh my goodness, it's so difficult. You probably spent months and months and months painting something like that. So those, I think, are the things that I like painting the most. And I don't always do it, but it's those like just crazy textural things. In this case, actually, if we look at the whole reference, I'm using a lot of like this out of focus, blurry, this bokeh, this shallow depth of field trickery, and the abstracted reflections, things like that. I really love things like this, and I don't always get a chance to paint them. So for this one, I wanted to really zoom in on something, paint some really cool, beautiful textures. Of course, I do have all this metallic stuff in there, which again, looks cool. It's impressive. It looks cool. But for an artist, the thing that's impressive is not all the shiny details. It's not all the ornamentation. It's this like weird, blurry, out of focus. This is the thing that as an artist, I'm looking at thinking, oh my goodness, that must have taken you forever. Very cool. I like those things. I like those textural effects like that. But I don't know, man. I just like painting. Honestly, I've done some interviews and things, and people have asked me what my favorite part of painting is. I don't know that I really like painting. Like the actual act of painting, I don't know. It's fine, but that's the performance part. That's not the fun of it. If you've ever done theater, the fun of it is all the rehearsals and understanding your lines and learning the dances, whatever it is, choreography. And the performance that's just stressful. So, and it's sort of the same way here, that the thing that I enjoy most, it's the research and the understanding, the story that you're trying to tell, and really crafting an image and composition. That's what I enjoy. I really like that. So This isn't looking too bad. You can see there is a color difference, a color cast. I'm not sure how well. I'm looking at my monitor here. Not sure how well that's really coming through. I'm a little too orange on this one, a little too red, and not quite purple enough, pink enough. And that again is because my alizarin crimson here, oh boy, that stuff is hard to use on your first layer. It's so thin. And usually on your first layer, you're looking for as much opacity as you can get. And oh boy, alizarin crimson doesn't really give it to you. So I'm trying to avoid using it if I can, but that means that I'm not really getting those kind of pink purple hues in there. That's okay. I think I'm happy with it. I'm going to leave it. There's some other things that I'm sure you'll notice. My contrast especially, my saturation is especially low. Things like that. That's second layer me's problem. Right now, this is first layer me, and I'm having my own problems. So I don't wanna add more from second layer me. All right, we've got a question in the chat. What's going on?
Edgar asks, do you think that painting in that detail can start to become abstraction, and you would develop an interest in purely abstract painting?
Interesting question, Edgar. And my answer is going to be maybe a little bit different than I would guess most. And the reason for that is that before studying at the ÀNI Academy, before studying with Anthony, I painted in acrylics, and I did some abstract work. I did some bad work, honestly. That's that's the kind of work that I did. Just because I was unpracticed, I was not knowledgeable, and the problem that I found with abstract work is that I am communicating pretty well nothing, and mostly because I didn't have the language to communicate it. You know, that's a big part of the ÀNI program that I was taught and I am now teaching, is that your painting is communication, and you know, when you are a student, when you're an art student, you're learning your ABCs. You're learning how to, you know, make some sentence structure and put grammar together, and that's what art education really is. So without those tools, I was not able to do any real adequate communication with my painting, and that was really frustrating for me. And I didn't like it, and I enjoyed, you know, sort of being a painter. I enjoyed the idea of art as a career. I obviously still do. But the actual painting itself, I wasn't happy with. So that's why I came away from abstraction in the first place. And I don't see any circumstance where I would go back to non-representational art. I think it's an important distinction between abstract and representational or not. Because you certainly could argue that with blown out details like this in the bokeh and things like that, that I am certainly doing a lot of abstraction. Here in the reflections particularly, this is just abstract. This is a reflection of an out of focus piece of gold chain. I mean, this is pure abstraction here. While I am still representing, though, the object itself. So would I go back to abstraction? Yeah, absolutely, if that helps me communicate. Would I go back to non-representational painting? I don't see any scenario where that's going to happen. I suppose you never know the future, but it seems very, very unlikely to me, mostly just because of how much I enjoy and appreciate representational work, and especially just, you know, there's some real beautiful realism that people are capable of today. You know, there's this revival of realism that's happening, that, you know, it was happening, I don't know, 19th century, and 20th century a little bit started to fall off, right? So you have art movements that ebb and flow, and they come back in style and out, just like fashion and anything else. But I would love to be part of that revival of realism, and I just appreciate it so much. So I think because of that, there's very, very little chance in my mind that at some point in the future, I'll decide, representationalism's not for me. I don't think so. I don't think so. But like I said, that is, I'm sure, in no small part because of my past experiences, and because at one point I was doing non-representational work and decided to change because I just didn't like it. Maybe that's just personal preference. Maybe that's because I thought, man, I should be a better painter than this, and I'm not. I've just sort of attributed that to non-representationalism, and that's probably not fair. But yeah, I think that's probably what happened. We're getting into the psychology of an artist here. There we get it. Thank you for saving me. We have another question in the chat, saving me from my own psychology talk.
This is interesting to know. He has seen people paint a wash of thin brown, orange, or tan paint onto their canvas before they start. Do you ever do that, or do you know people, or do you know why people do that?
Yeah. So, there are just like 15 different names for that, depending on the actual color that you use. But yeah, I did that for the big painting that's behind me. I am not doing it for this one, and I'll explain in just a second. But yeah, so that is just a ground layer, and there are a lot of different names for it. Most of them are Italian, but there are a lot of reasons why you might do that. One of the most common that I have heard is a term that I think originated with Bob Ross, or at least I heard it from Bob Ross, which is killing the white. Bob Ross is a vicious, brutal, violent guy, so it makes sense that he would have started it. And the reason for that is that white as a background can be first intimidating for new artists. Young artists, I should say, young in career, not young in age necessarily. But it can be a little intimidating for younger artists, and more than that, it really throws off your ability to decide on a color. For instance, if you look at this color here, actually, would you get my palette for me, please? So if we look at this color here, this may look reasonably light. This color right here doesn't really fit in with my kind of string that's going on here. It looks pretty light. Or this one, in comparison to the things around it, they look pretty light, right? But if we take that color and we move it way over here to something white, oh man, that looks pretty dark. And that's really the difference, right? It's a contrastual difference where if you are putting the correct value next to a very, very bright value that doesn't belong there, it could, because it's out of context, look just way too dark. It could look absolutely incorrect. And if you aren't experienced with that, man, that could throw you off pretty hard. So I think that's really one of the most common reasons that people do it. But also, if you're using it as a ground layer, some people just mix in pigment with their gesso. So they have to gesso the canvas in order to make a suitable surface for painting. And sometimes it's just colored. There are other times where you would perhaps want to do a ground layer for things to stick to a little bit better. I've certainly noticed that after your first layer, everything starts to adhere a lot better. Although again, that's probably a ground issue that if you use oil grounds, it sort of gets around that instead of acrylic grounds. We're talking shop here. I know that's not what your question was, but or alternatively is maybe you want to show some of that color through your artwork. A lot of people do that. A lot of more modern painters tend to do that, where maybe you're painting something you want to have like those little red edges poking through on your artwork. I've seen that a lot. when you're doing, perhaps like alla prima sketches. You've got that red poking through. So someone will put a ground down that's really bright, vibrant color. And that shows through because oil paints are pretty transparent, pretty translucent, I guess, at least. But, so yeah, it either makes it easier for you, whether it actually makes it easier for you or you feel like it makes it easier for you, who knows, or it's being used to affect the next layers of your paint. One of those two. It's a practice that I used to do a lot, actually, and sometimes with some alla prima paintings, portrait painting specifically, if I'm doing live portraiture, for example. Sometimes I will do that. I'll prime sort of a light skin tone, like sort of their vague highlights area. So something like right about there on me, maybe one of these. So prime the entire canvas that way. That way it makes it a little bit easier to move on with that painting, knowing that you can cut some corners because you already have some of the correct coloration going on there. I don't know that necessarily, again, it's actually that helpful, because if you do that, you're just muddying your darks, inevitably, or you're making it more difficult to hit other colors. So, common practice, especially with, you see a lot of atelier students doing it, like Florence Academy. It's those, French, 19th century French academic style ateliers. You see them do it a lot. Honestly, that's probably where I picked it up when I was first learning. I took myself through what I understood to be that kind of French academic style of atelier learning. Gave me a very, very good basic understanding of how to do general paint handling, things like that. So, not something that I regret, but maybe not the most efficient way to learn. If anybody wants to learn how to paint, man, go to a painter that's very, very, very good, whose knowledge is scientific in basis and not, I don't know, just generalities that have been passed down from generations to generations. That's not great. That's not a great way to learn. The story that I have heard, and I'm sure in other contexts most of you have heard as well, is, somebody's aunt, you go over to Thanksgiving and they cut the turkey in half because that's what's on the recipe that was passed down from their great-grandmother or something, and so they cut the turkey in half and put it in the oven. Oh yeah, it makes it better, makes it juicier, makes it more tender, whatever it is. And then someone eventually goes to grandma, great-grandma, whatever it is, and says, hey, why does your recipe say to cut the turkey in half? She says, oh, I had a very small oven. Had to cut the turkey in half. I'm like, oh. So it's just a thing that you did that has nothing to do with making something better. And unfortunately, a lot of painting information kind of falls into that. Of, it's something that someone observed from a traditional artist, maybe one, old masters, something like that. And then said, well, if I just do that, then my painting will get better. That's not the case. That's certainly not the case. So, maybe sometimes it would make your painting better, but if you're basing it exclusively off of, well, I saw it in a museum once and their painting's pretty good, so if I do that, then my painting will also be pretty good. It's unrealistic to expect that much change from something like that. So Anthony's program, the Waichulis curriculum, the ＡNI Art Academies curriculum, the one that I teach, I really appreciate it quite a lot, mostly because it's based on the way your brain actually works. We're making changes to your brain where we're trying to use the way that your brain actually functions, the way that your biology works, in order to trick you into seeing something. And to do that, you have to understand more the actual biology, the systems that are happening in order to create those visual images in your brain, instead of some dead guy painted it like this. It's not a good excuse to do something if you can't prove why. So anyway, okay, we went on a rant. I'm sorry, we went on a pretty strong tangent. I have had a little bit of experience with both styles of learning. I've had a lot of experience with one and a little bit with the other. And I certainly have found greater success with one than the other. So that's just what works for me. Do we have a question in the chat? Is that what's going on?
Yes, first,
Hector, hello. Good to see you in the chat. Thank you for watching live. I really appreciate that.
and the question Kelsey has is,
Yeah.
what classical artist do you admire the most, and what contemporary artist do you admire the most?
Kelsey has a difficult question of which artists do I admire the most, both classical and contemporary. I'm pretty well ingrained in some of the artistic circles contemporarily, and I know a lot of them. I have a great admiration for a lot of contemporary artists. Certainly too many to list off. I will say though that there's a difference between admiring somebody's work, acknowledging that it is very skillfully done, and trying to support other artists, being generally supportive and admiring their work, and trying to integrate that sort of work or their themes or ideas or anything like that into my own. I try to be pretty closed off to that sort of thing, and I know maybe I shouldn't. But at this point in my career, I'm really starting to kind of explore myself and what I want to do and the work that I want to create and themes that I want to present. And I find maybe it's a little more challenging if instead I am focused on what other artists are doing and paying a little too much attention. And, maybe somebody has success with one type of painting or another. And in an effort to emulate that success, I end up emulating that work. And that wouldn't be true to myself and the work that I want to create. So I really try not to do that. So I'm afraid I don't have a great answer for that question as far as contemporary artists go, because there are some really incredible contemporary artists, and the skill level of contemporary artists today is way higher than it has ever been. Something that was told to me is that if you look at Mozart and the age that he was and the skill set that he had at his age, looks incredible. But if you compare that to the Suzuki method of learning string instruments, predominantly, I think, you would find that he's only about average today, because the skill cap today is so much higher than it's ever been. There's the barrier to entry as a professional artist or violinist or any sort of artist is pretty high, because the skill level is so high. So yeah, there are incredible artists all over the place. I've also heard from a lot of people that they don't like contemporary art. Usually they say, I don't like modern art, misunderstanding the difference between modern and contemporary. What that actually is, though, is that, maybe you're on, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok, social media in general, and it's very easy for somebody to get their artwork in front of you, regardless of their skill level. And it is a little bit more difficult to find high skill people all in one place. So it's very easy to say, well, artists today all, do, I don't know. I don't want to tell you any artists are bad, but these like splatter paintings or spin art. I don't know. Like acrylic pour painting, stuff like that. Things that are, I think we can all agree, relative to the work that I'm doing here or to some of the realist artists today, relatively a much lower skill level. I think that's fair to say. So, yeah, I think there are some incredible artists all over the place. Anthony's certainly at the top for me. Man, that dude is skillful. But There are tons of artists in that group. Natalie Featherston, really great artist. Maybe a little bit looser than some of the work that I'm doing here. Definitely looser than some of the work Anthony's doing, but yeah, she cranks out some beautiful paintings. Julie Beck, another great one. The ARA Boston, Academy of Realist Art Boston, has a lot of instructors there that are very, very good. Eric Johnson, I think, is another one. I'm so sorry if I'm getting anyone's names wrong. Just off the top of my head here, I think Eric Johnson, I think, is the only one I'm not 100% sure, and I'm pretty sure that that's it, though. I actually follow exclusively artists on Instagram. I follow tons and tons of artists. If you ever follow me on Instagram, you're like, hey, wait a minute, what a jerk, you didn't follow me back. That's why. I follow a lot of artists on Instagram because I'm trying to surround myself with art, because it helps find inspiration, you know? And anyone who is trying to delve into the, you know, trying to be more of a connoisseur of art, that's what I would suggest. Just surround yourself with it. I certainly do, and I love it. I also I follow one account that is dogs, because I love dogs, and I follow one account that is like a home renovation or something. There's a lot of bad home renovation channels, but I did find a good one that I really like. I do follow one guy who builds computers, but I don't want to see much of it. I want to see artists. I don't want to see any of that. So, but every now and then a just adorable dog comes across my Instagram feed, and I'm like, okay, we can pause here for a minute. That's fine. You've got my attention. That's fine. More classical artists? I don't know. You know, I go through phases. I had a thing for Turner a while back, and I do love Turner's work. Very passionate work, you know? Very energetic work. Solomon J. Solomon, I love his work. Unfortunately, what you'll find with a lot of those artists is that they were working artists, and what that meant at the time was that they were taking a lot of commissions, and they were working either for wealthy people, royalty, or the church. Especially if you go back a little farther in time, you get a lot of people working for the church, and what that means is that they ended up doing work that wasn't necessarily their own. You know what I mean? That it wasn't necessarily what they wanted to produce, because they were at a certain point in time seen more as they were craftsmen more than artists. They were craftsmen, and somebody said, "Hey, I want a painting of myself or of God, or you know, this one particular story," and that's what they would do. And sometimes they put a little bit of themselves in that. Usually they put very little of themselves. Every now and then you'll find an artist that puts a lot of themselves in work like that. And usually those are the artists that are rejected a little bit. I don't know if you've seen, there's two brothers that were sculptors, and they sculpted for a church. They were asked to sculpt Lucifer, fallen Lucifer, you know, just hitting the ground, wings up, like kind of these bat wings. And the first brother made him real hot. And the church was like, hey, no, that's not really the vibe we're going for with this sculpture. Yeah, I think maybe not on this one. And so they instead hired his brother, who made him even hotter, even sexier. Oh man, just wonderful. So yeah, sometimes you'll find artists in the same situation who put a little bit too much of themselves in it, and those artists tend not to do well in those circles. Very funny. So I take very few commissions. Commissions for me are pretty rare, because I'm really trying to explore the work that I want to do. I'm trying to do what makes me happy and find the work that really speaks most to me, that I can communicate best with, whatever my ideas happen to be at that moment. And normally I will find a story, usually from history, from art history, something theatrical, like this, for example. And I'll paint it as it stands. I'll paint the story of it, applying very much my own interpretation to it, sort of piggybacking off of that story and putting my themes and my thoughts into it. I think the perfect example and sort of the height of doing that for me is this giant painting behind me of the story of Joan of Arc, and the saints appearing to her to tell her to defend the French countryside from the invading English. And man, there's a lot of story going behind that. And to be fair, it took me, that composition I was working on for the better part of, I want to say 3 years. Not at the same time, obviously. I just sort of started it before going to Anthony in the ＡNI Art Academy. And I didn't finish it until I had already graduated and I had started as a dean here in the Dominican Republic. But yeah, I was thinking about it a lot for a long time. As a result, there's a lot behind that one, and a lot to look at, a lot to study, a lot to read about. So many different, allusions to different things in that work, and it's the sort of work that I hope that people would study. That's the sort of work that I want to create, not something that is only just a pretty picture that you can hang on your wall. Of course, there's certainly a lot of merit in that as well. But yeah, I want to be able to create the type of work that people would want to study. So whether or not I'm accomplishing that in this point in my career, I don't know. But it's what I'm working towards. And I'm happy to be doing it. I think, again, that's why I love so much composition more than the actual act of painting itself, is because composition is the thing that really does that for me. That's the thing that gets me to that place of, I feel like I've created something worthwhile. But that's all in composition. And then the rest is just, well, now you got to do it. Now you got to have that performance aspect of it. So, Not to say that I don't like painting. I do. It's fun. I haven't painted in a little while. We've been very busy here. Always something going on here at the ＡNI Art Academy, Dominicana. Always something. Good things, usually. For instance, I was just featured, I had a small part, right? But I was in a story on CBS Mornings about the ＡNI Dominicana and some of the work that we're doing here. I was thrilled to be a part of that. I was thrilled at the opportunities that some of the students got to really show off their work and, get their name out there. Really, really awesome. But man, stuff like that takes up a lot of time. So I haven't been painting for a little while. Actually, since I finished that large one, which was, I want to say October. Yeah. Producer Rachel says October, so I'm going to trust her. So yeah, I haven't painted in a long time. And it changes my mood. It definitely does. I have noticed I'll come home the last couple days, I'm like, I'm so happy I got to paint today, It's so great. That's why I got into this in the first place, because I don't know, it's nice. I like getting to do it. Okay, I'm going to switch tools for just a second here. I want to show this off. This tool here, this is actually, I think it's a clay sculpting tool. They're just little silicone tools. You can see they're pretty bendy, pretty malleable. And I've got a few of them here. I've got another one that's sort of this wedge. Yeah. I've got a few of those. I'm just going to use this because I've contaminated this spot, and I want it to be pretty bright white here. So I've contaminated this. So I'm just going to use this to sort of pull some of that paint off of there. And you can see maybe It's a little bit brighter. Yeah, that's all I'm doing. Just a little bit. Just get that out of there. Oh, Vince, you know what? Something that I wanted to come back to with doing that under layer in color that you were asking about. One of the reasons that I don't do that anymore, certainly not for this type of work, is you can see on my painting here, I've got all these little tiny dash marks, all these little tiny lines. Now this is a transfer, so this is either carbon transfer or oil transfer, graphite transfer. I've used it all. This one happens to be carbon transfer, where you can take your reference, or a drawing usually is what you would do. You would draw out, here's exactly what I want the painting to look like, and then you would put a carbon paper, transfer paper in between and just redraw your drawing, and that will give you some of these lines here. And you'll notice they're pretty light, they're pretty gentle here. But if you were to really get in, you really get close on especially on some of these lighter parts, you can see this little bit underneath, especially these lighter parts, you can see it. And I really want to avoid having anything dark underneath this painting, because on these lighter spots, especially around the face, which is a focal point, around this face too in particular, you can see it underneath, and it darkens everything. So putting anything other than just white behind the first layer of your painting, man, can be very detrimental, I have found. Sometimes it's okay, sometimes you're doing a really dark painting and you can kind of get by with it, not a big deal. A good example of that, and again, I did not do it, but a good example of a painting that maybe I would have gotten away with it was the Oysters painting, the Walrus and the Carpenter, Tale of the Curious Oysters painting that I did earlier, it would have been last year. Really dark painting. There's a lot of just darkness in the painting, black background. So maybe I could have gotten away with it on a painting like that, but I don't know, it kills your highlights, it lowers your contrast because all your highlights get a little bit dimmer. But I suppose I wouldn't mind it if I were used to it. I'm not used to it. I don't like it, so I don't use it. Honestly, I feel like some of that is speeding up the painting process. I feel like there's a lot of people really focused on that speed of painting process. I certainly am. I'm worried about efficiency. I want to get going, get done. We've been here for an hour today. I've mostly been talking, which means I haven't been doing a ton of painting. Normally by now I probably would have finished this little section here, this little blue section, which I'm definitely going to do that before I stop painting today. I want to finish that section. But yeah, we don't have to do all that on stream. I don't know if we'll last that long. But yeah, I think some of that comes out of trying to be efficient and really put the paint down quickly, and maybe somebody noticed that, well, my second layer is a lot easier than my first. Maybe I'll just put down a very, very general first layer, or maybe even I'll just put down one color, my entire first layer. I don't think it works. I don't think that really speeds you up very much. With something like this is about as general as I want to be, and you can see it's pretty close. It's pretty specific. Some of my values are off. Some of my colors are off. My saturation, my contrast, definitely off. But it's close. And when you're working tight like this, you want to be as close as you can on your first layer, because from there it only gets better. So if you start there, and you want to get a little bit better, the next layer gets better, the next layer gets better, the next layer gets better. If you start way down, next layer, oh, you're back where you should have started in the first place. No good. So yeah, I want to be pretty specific on my early layers if I can help it. Sometimes if I'm working on something a little bit looser, like the big one back there, a more general first layer, that's okay. But you do stuff like that, you're inviting somebody to maybe walk closer, and as they walk closer, they find that the painting's maybe not quite as good as they expected it to be. So I don't want that to happen. I want people to walk closer and get more and more and more impressed as they do. I don't know if that actually happened. Maybe it does. That's the hope. Certainly, again, with somebody like Anthony, that's what happens. You get closer to it and you're like, oh my God, what is this? Is it just a hole in the wall and there's things behind it and that's what I'm looking at? That's what it feels like. Pretty weird, pretty wild. Okay, so you can see, actually, this is a really good example. I'm painting this blue on a white just surrounding here, and it looks, to my eye, black. It's dark. But if I take the same blue and I put it over here, you can see, I don't know how well you can quite see that. It's actually a little bit too light. It's just a little light. A little bit too light. So I'm going to adjust that color. And you can see that here. So I've got my general paint piles, and then if I want to adjust the color, I can either take a little from the darker one, come across, or I can just adjust with a full color. And I really don't want to adjust it much, so doing very, very little here. But I'm just going to adjust that a little bit darker. And if I were trusting my eye, or had relative inexperience, and I were just trusting that, no, that looks darker to me, and therefore I'm going to make the whole thing lighter. It looks a little bit too dark, only because it's out of context, mind you. It looks a little bit too dark, so I'm going to make it lighter. By the time I would have added all of that context, my entire value scale would have been thrown way out of whack. Would have been terrible. I would have had to just redo the entire thing. Again, that comes with experience. You start to get used to that sort of thing. Yeah, well, maybe that's why people put that ground layer on there. But I would argue that if you couldn't trust your experience, and therefore you're using a tool that helps you not trust your experience, maybe you shouldn't be using that tool. Maybe you should just get a little bit better, a little bit more experience that you can trust. That would be my argument. Easier said than done, of course. But perfect world, right? Everybody's got enough time that they can get as good as they want at as much as they want. Unrealistic. But hey, if you can find a way to do it, that's what I did, and pretty happy with my work. Something that Anthony and I were very recently talking about, and I feel like I'm revealing something here, but something that we were talking about is that sort of mysticism that people apply to artists, that romanticism of, well, this person is just simply gifted. There's just something special about them. Just amazing work. I could never hope to do that. They're just special. And that's applied to artists, musicians, people with a high romanticized skill set. And sometimes you just want to let people believe it, Sometimes you just want to say, yeah, it's true. Yeah, I don't know, I'm just really good. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I've been like this since I was born. It's crazy. But no, the truth is, you can do it too. Anybody could. I will say, maybe a caveat to that, as long as you have the drive and the dedication to it, then you could. You could. That's why I believe in the ÀNI program. That's why I'm teaching here, because I believe it. If you're dedicated to it, you can do it. Might not like it. You're certainly not going to like it, but you could. Hard work getting good at things. Something that I would love to do. I absolutely adore the cello. I love it so much. And I have not gotten the opportunity to pursue it. I bought a cello because, again, I love it, And that cello has been with me for some years and never learned how to play it. But I will not sell it. I'm going to keep it around because it is my commitment to myself. I will learn to play this cello because I love it so much. But like art, like many things, difficult to get into things like that. Difficult to find the time to learn these things. Can you show my palette here, please? Producer Rachel, thank you. So something that I'm doing here, you'll notice normally when I was painting, these cups are closed. And I just opened one, and I have my medium in the left and my solvent in the right. My solvent is almost always closed. I very, very rarely use it. I try to be solvent free. Solvents can bother people. So if you're in a shared studio, be solvent free. But this one is my medium. It is Neil McGilp, which I don't know why I started using Neil McGilp. It's something that I picked up that I enjoy. I like it. None of the artists around me I think use it, so I'm not sure where I picked that up. But yeah, it's a medium that I like. It's a sort of a gel. It's by the way, when I put my hand down here, I'm wiping off my brush, trying to get some of this paint out. But instead of using solvents here, because I don't want to be using solvents, what I'm instead doing is I'm using some of this medium, this Neo McGilp, and I'm effectively just cleaning my brush out with it. So just wanted to show you what I was doing. The medium, no matter kind of what you're doing, there's some exception if you're doing some very graphical things, but medium is almost never appropriate to be used in your first layer. Because again, you're trying to get that opacity of your first layer. And if you can't get that opacity, you're just going to make your subsequent layers more difficult. So adding medium, you can take this off. Adding medium is just going to hurt your opacity. So you don't want to do it. Don't want to add it if you can help it. So by cleaning my brush in there, I am adding just a tiny bit of medium. That's okay. I can deal with that. Same thing with using, very, very thin colors like that, alizarin crimson. You use a tiny bit, that's okay. You could, but if you can get away with not doing it at all, you're gonna have a nicer time on these first layers. By the way, I usually do 2 layers. I always do 2 layers, and sometimes I have found that 3, 4 even layers is necessary, but usually it's 2, and then, every now and then glaze in a third, add some little details with a third. So it's usually not the entire thing on a third layer. So when I say your first layer needs to be pretty opaque, it's because I only want to do 2. And I certainly don't want to do just 1. I know it seems with the efficiency that, man, if I could only do 1 layer, like, I'm on my 4th day here. This is pretty quick. I could have this painting finished in, I don't know, a week or 2, if I could only do 1 layer. But then I'd have a bad painting, and I don't want to do that. So maybe that's just me. I don't want to insult anybody who just does a single layer. But for me personally, if I stop at 1 layer, it means I'm accepting a bad painting, and I'm not going to do that. My paintings are going to be good. I've decided. That's one of those things that I have noticed with some students is, as soon as you graduate, nobody's there looking over your shoulder, telling you that your painting is bad. You allow your painting to be bad. Don't do that. Instead, be the kind of person that tells yourself, hey, you're not good at this. Know that you are bad, and then you'll get better. I am my worst critic. I'm my harshest critic. It keeps me good at things, though. I improve because of it. I am unwilling to accept failure from my artwork, and of course failure is, it's all personal, My failure probably looks different than someone else's, but I'm unwilling to accept what I have deemed as failure. We have a question in the chat.
Miles Ferris is in the chat.
Miles, what are you doing here? Fancy seeing you here. Welcome to the chat, Miles. I'm so glad to have you here.
Do you have a favorite genre of music you like to listen to while you paint?
Oh, good question. Do I have a favorite genre of music when I like to paint? I don't know if you guys can hear producer Rachel. You can probably hear a little bit, but I do, Miles, and it depends actually on the individual painting. I listen to different things depending on the painting. So the big one back there is the last one that I finished. That was Bon Iver. I listen to newer stuff only. It's weird music, but man, is it beautiful. A little bit jazzy, a little bit, I don't know, it's odd. He's an indie artist and makes some bizarre music lately, and I love it. A weird mood for all painting, but for that one, that's what I went with. Lately, I've been, on this one, I've been listening to, I don't know, I've been listening to a lot of jazz, a lot of funk music, actually. Yeah, so I'm looking for something a little more upbeat. I don't want to get too relaxed when I'm painting. So I want to, maintain focus. So I listen to some upbeat, usually classical or jazz, or every now and then some funk music. With this one, when I was preparing the panel, actually, I was listening to some rap, which is not typical for me. But I went on to YouTube Music, and they were like, hey, you want to listen to Megan Thee Stallion? And I was like, I mean, I guess. And I did for, it was probably a couple days I listened to it, and I enjoyed it. It was pretty good. It's not really my jam. Miles, you know as well as anybody that that Kanye was my jam back in the day. Not so much anymore because he lost his mind. But we don't have to talk about that. But I haven't really listened to his music since. But yeah, that College Dropout album, that's where it's at. It's pretty good. So yeah, a lot of different things. It depends on the mood, and depends on the mood of the painting. I don't know why that really makes an impact for me. But some paintings I can't really do if I'm listening to some music. Just doesn't fit. Doesn't feel good. Doesn't feel right. So yeah. Anybody else? If there are any other artists in the chat, man, if you've got music suggestions, I'd love to hear them. Right now we're listening to some, what would you call this? It's like some chill, lo-fi. Yeah, lo-fi kind of jazz. Yeah. And that's sort of the mood that I'm going for with this painting. We're just chilling out. It's cool. It's relaxing. You don't need to be uptight about it. There's some paintings you have to be uptight about. Probably on the second layer of this one, I want to be a little more uptight, and I think the music choice is going to change. But yeah, right now, something easy, something jazzy. It's a good question. I'm gonna have to talk to some of the artists that I know, see if anybody has, some specificity. Hey, I only ever listen to this one thing while I paint, and that's all I ever listen to. That'd be interesting. I want to know that.
Music recommendation.
Oh, music recommendation. What do we got?
The World of Warcraft soundtrack.
The World of... I should have expected this, Kelsey. I should have expected it. World of Warcraft soundtrack. Honestly, I don't know what it is. So you might be spot on. That might be the perfect recommendation. If I'm doing, epic battle scene painting, something like that. Yeah, I could do it. I'll have to try it out. We'll see. We'll see. I do want to do, speaking of that, actually, I do want to do some larger work. I would love to do some huge epic scenes like that. Lot of different models, stuff like that. I can't do that while I'm here, unfortunately. I don't quite have the access that I'm looking for to things and armor and props and people. I don't quite have the access that I need. But I think later this year, I I think I will, and yeah, I think I'm gonna have the ability to do some big, crazy, cool things like that. I'll stream that too. Why not? We'll get some different camera angles so you can see me standing on a ladder in order to get to the top of the painting. I had to do that with this one because my easel doesn't go all the way down. So yeah, maybe we can do that. I don't know, this fall. That'd be cool. I'd be into that. And at that point, I will listen to the World of Warcraft soundtrack to do it. I think I'll get demonetized if I try to put that on a stream or a YouTube video though. So you guys might be hearing something different, and I'll have headphones in. You can't hear it. I'll have headphones in though. That'd be funny. All right, yeah, I got some dust on here. That is something I want to take care of that immediately. If you start getting dust and things ingrained into your painting, you're gonna be sorry because it's not gonna come out. Okay, so I've left. I don't know why I've done this. I've left this weird arm here. I just ignored it. It's fine. I have a bad habit of sort of jumping around the painting. You know, just with the color that I'm using and leaving sections, and you know, I do that when I paint faces too. I do that when I paint faces that I'll usually start on a forehead because it's, you know, this clear, rounded light to dark on a forehead. So I tend to start on a forehead when I'm doing portraits, and then usually I'll start on one side and then I'll crawl down away from the eye. Maybe I'll come back up and then maybe I'll finish that eye, come down, other side of the nose, won't do the nose for some reason, come back, do the mouth, end up somewhere on the neck. Half the face isn't done. What's happening? I don't know. It's the way I paint. I wish sometimes I were more methodical than that. And you know, when I was learning, I went by a grid, and I do not do that anymore. I can't do it. I don't know. It didn't vibe with me. Great way to learn though. Man, really, really good way to learn. It really causes you to sort of zoom in and really focus on an area. So you have for example, a 1-inch grid. Now you're only looking at a section that is 1 inch by 1 inch, and getting in the mindset of, if this 1 inch looks identical to my reference 1 inch, then I can move on and not before. Great way to learn. But more for drawing, honestly, than painting, because like I said, your first layer, it's never going to look like that. Not for me. So, great way to learn. I do not do it. I stopped doing that pretty early on, actually. I think it was by I want to say it was by my third creative project. I know I definitely still had the grid. So you do 4 or 5 creative projects in the ÀNI program in drawing. It's 4. Yep. So by my third, I had the grid still there. I wasn't really going grid by grid anymore. I was sort of doing this sort of weird undulation of where I've decided to paint. So I've just kept that up, I guess. So I'm just going back a little bit. I'm using this. This is a Dynasty synthetic sable number 4. You can see on there. It's pretty small, but it's very, very loose bristles, really soft bristles. And I'm just using that to kind of sweep across the surface a little bit. I'm not painting with this. There's no paint in this brush. There shouldn't be any paint in this brush. And in fact, you can see me kind of pulling out. So you might notice a little bit of paint on my finger here, a little bit there. So if there is ever paint on here, I'm pulling it out. I'm not trying to spread or move paint like that. It's really just, if there's anything in the paint surface, in the paint layer, I'm moving it out. I'm getting it out of there. I don't want any dust or anything in there. Because again, that gives us those ridges, that topography to our painting, instead of being able to communicate just with the actual color, value saturation, everything like that. Chroma, I should say chroma. I'm on saturation because that's what Photoshop calls it. Chroma. You want to communicate with those things, and any topography of your painting can really affect what that looks like. So if I hold this up to the light, should be able to see there's a little bit of a sheen on it. Yeah, there you go. A little bit of a sheen. Nothing's really catching the light. There are a couple spots that are wet that are catching the light a little bit more than others, but you don't really see paint ridges or anything like that. And that's very purposeful. I really don't want to see that. I want it to be nice and flat and consistent and smooth. There's a little bit of texture to these panels, so you're going to see a little bit of texture, but as much as I can, I don't want to see it. So another thing that I'm doing here with this really soft brush is I'm just getting rid of any kind of brush marks, any kind of, I was scumbling is what that's called, is just sort of doing a little bit of this with your brush. Yeah, you can see a tiny bit of paint there, but just sort of pushing the value in, and that leaves some brush marks on there. I don't want to see those either. I want it perfectly smooth. So I'm also just going to get rid of some of those while I'm at it here. Not as vital to get rid of those right now. Definitely before I'm done painting today, I'll get rid of those. But the reason that I stopped and started doing this is just because I saw some little, I don't know what it was, dust, I don't know, something in my paint. And I don't want to let that go. So, because as it starts to dry, getting that out gets harder and harder. So, yeah, just want to get it before it becomes an issue. What do you think? It's not bad. It's not bad. I'm looking at the monitor here. It's not bad. Hey, what the hell? This guy can paint. I don't know. I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's what they tell me. All right. By the way, the brushes that I'm using here, I've got the synthetic Sable Dynasty 4, and I'm also using Princeton Imperials. That's all I'm using today, just these two. Probably for my entire first layer, I'll just use these. I've got a couple Princeton Imperials of different sizes over here. 0 is what I'm going to use almost exclusively for this one, and a Dynasty 6, a little bit bigger, you can see. That's pretty much it for my first layer. There's not a ton of like really complicated textural issues or graphical issues or anything like that where I would need to use anything more specific. Everything's just, you treat it all the same, and first layer is going to be a little too general. So as a result, I'm not going to get any more specific with my brushes either. Let's see. Yeah. Well, tell you what, how long's it been? How long have we been streaming there, Producer Rachel? Hour and a half. It's a good first stream. It's a good first stream. I appreciate all of you being here. I so appreciate it here. I'm gonna take me off of, there you go. Now I can move and no one's gonna throw up. I appreciate everybody being here. I think we're gonna call it at an hour and a half. I've got more painting to get done, but if I keep talking to you guys, I'm never gonna get it done. So I'm gonna finish up here on this blue section, and then the next time that I stream, we'll keep going with the to the right of our little king here, of King Midas. We'll keep going on, I don't know what that will be. I don't have a stream scheduled just yet. We're just still sort of, testing things out. I'm not sure if YouTube or Twitch is going to be the best place for me to stream, or Kick, I guess. YouTube doesn't even have an art tab at this point, so it is very possible that YouTube is the wrong place for me to be streaming. However, it is maybe arguably the easiest to access, and maybe the easiest to grow on if I continue to pursue, YouTube videos and shorts and things like that. You kind of have to do it all. So if I'm just going to keep doing streaming, maybe Twitch, not sure. If I'm going to keep doing videos and things like that, maybe we'll stick with YouTube. I don't know. if you have any suggestions for me on that front, if anybody has a little more experience with that, I would love to know. I would love to hear it, because difficult to really find that information, especially for art streamers. There really aren't many. Especially on YouTube. Just not many of us out there. So I'm getting into it, and I'm getting into a little bit of uncharted territory, at least by my experience. So we'll see how it goes, and assuming that it all goes well, and yeah, maybe YouTube's the right place, whatever, we will put out a stream schedule, do this as a regular thing. Probably won't be every day, because then I'm never going to finish this painting. But yeah, if you have any suggestions for me, put them in the comments below. Even after this live stream ends, the YouTube video will still be active. It'll still be there, so you can still put your comments there. I would love to hear from all of you. Thank you again so much for watching. Thank you for stepping in live, or if you're watching later on from the video, thank you for being here. I appreciate you. Make sure, please, to subscribe if you want to get alerts for my future live videos. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you. We're going to go and enjoy this video and song of me also painting. So, thank you guys.